Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a wild ride. You're time traveling to medieval England, where the air smells like damp straw and regret. Picture this. You're standing in a muddy field, the sky a bruised gray, with oxen grunting and a distant church bell clanging like it's mad at you. Your sneakers are sinking into the muck, and a toothless farmer's staring like you're an alien. Welcome to the 1300s, where life's a gamble, and you probably won't survive this. But let's give it a shot, yeah? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you're all at. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, and the world snaps into focus. 1 second. You're in your cozy 21st century life. The next, you're here, dropped like a confused pigeon into a medieval mess. The air's thick with wood smoke and something you'd rather not identify. Spoiler, it's probably sewage. Your modern clothes stick out like a neon sign, all synthetic fibers and zippers, while everyone else is draped in scratchy wool or linen that's seen better days. A woman with a basket of turnips gives you a side eye, muttering something about strange folk. You try to smile, but your stomach's doing flips. Where do you even start? First, you notice the noise. It's not like the hum of traffic or your phone's endless notifications. This is raw. Chickens clucking, a blacksmith hammering, kids shrieking as they chase a pig through the dirt. Somewhere, a dog's barking, and you're pretty sure it's not a friendly yap. The ground's uneven, all ruts and puddles, and you nearly trip over a stray bucket. You're in a village, probably no bigger than a few hundred souls, but it feels like chaos central. Thatched roofs lean at weird angles, and the houses, wooden, wattle and daub things, look like they might collapse if you sneeze too hard. You take a step and squelch. Your shoe's now best friends with a pile of something you hope is just mud. A mainstream fact to ground you. This is the era of the Black Death's aftermath, roughly 1350, when England's population was slashed by nearly half. Villages like this one are still reeling, with abandoned fields and a grim vibe. Everyone's working overtime to survive. And here you are, a time traveler with no skills to offer. Good luck explaining social media manager to these folks. A quirky tidbit? People here think your shiny watch might be witchcraft. Clocks exist, sure, but they're clunky, monastery-bound things, not wrist bling. You'd better hide it unless you want a mob with pitchforks. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants feared outsiders more than disease. Some say strangers were blamed for plagues, others say locals were too busy starving to care. Either way, you're not exactly getting a warm welcome. You wander toward what looks like the village center, dodging a cart piled with firewood. A man's shouting about ale, his voice hoarse like he's been at it all day. You're tempted to ask for directions, but to where? You've got no phone, no GPS, no clue. The sun's low, painting the sky orange, and you realize night's coming fast. No streetlights here, just torches if you're lucky. You're starting to panic, but let's be real. You've got bigger problems than finding a charger. Like, say, not starving or getting accused of heresy by breakfast. You spot a church? Its stone walls the sturdiest thing around? Maybe it's a safe bet. But then you hear a low growl. A mangy dog's eyeing you like your dinner. You back away, heart pounding, and bump into a kid who giggles and bolts. At least someone's having fun. Joke number 1. You thought your commute was bad? Try dodging oxen and open sewers just to find a loaf of bread. You're not in Kansas anymore, or even close. By now, you're wondering how anyone lives like this. The answer? Barely. You're cold, your shoes are ruined, and you're pretty sure that smell's following you. You need shelter, food, and a game plan, but the village feels like a puzzle with half the pieces missing. You're a stranger in a world that doesn't trust strangers, and every step's a reminder you don't belong. Still, you're here now, so you take a deep breath. Yep, that's definitely sewage. And keep moving. Tomorrow's got to be better, right? Don't bet on it. You trudge through the village, the chaos of your arrival still buzzing in your head. The muddy path sucks at your shoes, and you're trying not to gawk at the thatched roofs or the kids chasing a scrawny chicken like it's the Olympics. This place is alive, messy, and loud. Think a farmer's market on steroids, minus the artisanal coffee. You're in the heart of a medieval village now, and it's time to figure out how this place ticks before you accidentally insult someone's cow and end up in a ditch. The village is a tangle of narrow lanes, maybe a dozen or so homes clustered around a central green where a rickety well creaks in the breeze. Houses are built from timber and wattle and daub, basically sticks and mud plastered together, with roofs of straw that look like they've got a bad haircut. Smoke curls from chimneys, and you catch whiffs of burning wood mixed with something meaty. Your stomach growls, but you're not sure you're ready for whatever's cooking. A woman in a linen headscarf hurries past, balancing a basket of eggs. She doesn't look at you, but you feel her judgment. Joke number 1. You thought rush hour was bad? Try weaving through goats and grumpy villagers without a map. A mainstream fact to anchor you. Villages like this were the backbone of medieval England, housing about 90% of the population in the 14th century. Most folks were tied to the land, working fields for a lord who owned everything, including their time. You're standing in a world where survival depends on the harvest, and right now, you're just a weirdo in weird clothes. Speaking of clothes, yours are drawing stares. Your jeans and hoodie scream outsider, and you're starting to wish you'd packed a tunic. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers might think your sneakers are cursed, or at least wonder why they're so clean. Footwear here is leather, hand-stitched, and caked in mud. Fancy shoes mark you as either rich or suspicious, and you're definitely not rich. You pause by the well, where two men are arguing over whose turn it is to haul water. Their accents are thick, a mix of Old English and regional slang that makes your head spin. You catch words like plow and tithe, but it's like eavesdropping on a foreign film with no subtitles. One guy's gesturing wildly, his hands calloused and dirty. You're tempted to ask for a drink, but the water looks like it's been through a swamp. Historians still argue whether medieval wells were more a source of life or disease. Some say they were cleaner than rivers, others say they were basically petri dishes. Either way, you're not thirsty enough to test it. You wander toward a cluster of homes, noticing how small they are. Most are one room, maybe 15 by 20 feet, with dirt floors and a fire pit in the center. Windows? Forget it. Just small shutters to keep out the cold. Inside one, you glimpse a family. A woman stirring a pot, kids wrestling in the corner, and a man sharpening a scythe. It's cozy in a gritty, hope you like smoke way. You're starting to get it. This village is a machine, every person a cog. There's no Netflix, no weekends, just work, eat, sleep, repeat. A boy runs up, maybe 10, with a gap-toothed grin. He points at your phone, which you foolishly pulled out to check the time. "What's that then?" he asks, eyes wide. You stammer, shoving it back in your pocket. Joke number 2. Forget going viral. Here, viral means the plague, and you're not about that life. You mutter something about it being a trinket and scoot away before he calls his dad. Lesson learned. Keep modern stuff hidden, or you're begging for trouble. The village green's busier now. A cart's unloading sacks of grain, and a gaggle of women are gossiping by a low stone wall. You catch snippets. Something about a bad harvest, and a cow that won't milk. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this place. It's all about survival, community, and not stepping on toes. But you're still an outsider, and every stare reminds you of that. You spot a path leading to a manor house in the distance, its stone walls looming. That's where the Lord lives, the guy who runs this show. You're curious, but poking around there sounds like a bad idea. As the sun dips, the air gets colder, and you realize you've got no plan for tonight. The village is winding down. Fires are lit. Doors are closing. You're alone, still smelling that sewage from earlier. Remember that first squelch? You need allies, food, and a place to crash. But right now, you're just a stranger in a strange land. A dog barks, and you jump. Joke number 3. You thought your neighbor's karaoke was loud? Try sleeping through a village full of snoring pigs and creaky shutters. Good luck. You're still reeling from the village's gritty pulse, the muddy paths and curious stares clinging to you like damp wool. That manor house you spotted looms in your mind, its stone walls a stark contrast to the village's rickety huts. You're starting to sense the invisible lines that hold this place together, and they all lead to power. Who has it, who doesn't, and where you fit in. Spoiler, you're at the bottom, and it's time to learn the rules of this medieval pecking order before you accidentally offend someone with a sword. You head toward the manor, keeping to the edge of the village green where the crowd's thinning. The air's sharp with evening chill, and you're shivering in your hoodie. Around you, villagers are hurrying home, their faces etched with the kind of exhaustion that comes from a life of endless labor. You pass a man driving oxen, his whip cracking softly. He doesn't look up, but you feel the weight of his world. A world where everyone's slotted into a rigid hierarchy. A mainstream fact to ground you. This is the feudal system, the backbone of 14th century England, where the king grants land to lords, lords rule over peasants, and everyone owes someone something. You? You owe everyone a good reason not to toss you out. The manor's closer now, its walls rising like a fortress. It's not a fairy tale castle, but it's the fanciest thing you've seen since landing here. Timber and stone, with narrow windows and a gate that screams, "Stay out." You linger near a low hedge, watching a servant haul firewood inside. A quirky tidbit? Servants like him might sleep in the manor's great hall, curled up on straw like human burritos, while the lord gets a proper bed. You're starting to realize comfort is a privilege, and you're not on the guest list. You're itching to peek inside, but a burly man with a staff, some kind of guard, gives you a look that says, "Don't even think about it." You back off, hands raised like you're surrendering to medieval mall security. Joke number 1. You thought your boss was strict? Try working for a lord who can legally yeet you into a dungeon. You're starting to get the vibe. The lord's the big dog, his family and knights are next, and everyone else, peasants, servants, you, scraps for whatever's left. You turn back toward the village, noticing how the houses get shabbier the farther you go. A woman's scolding her kids outside a hut, her voice sharp but tired. She's probably a peasant's wife, tied to the same land as her husband, working fields and raising kids who'll do the same. Historians still argue whether peasants felt trapped or just accepted their lot. Some say they dreamed of freedom, others say they couldn't imagine life without a lord's protection. Either way, you're feeling the squeeze. You're nobody here, with no land, no title, no clue. A group of men pass by, their tunics patched and their faces weathered. They're talking about villains and freemen, and you eavesdrop, piecing it together. Villains are basically serfs, bound to the lord's land, working his fields for a chunk of their lives. Freemen have a bit more wiggle room, maybe renting land or working trades, but they're still under the lord's thumb. You? You're neither, which makes you a problem. A stray dog sniffs your leg, and you shoo it away, wondering if you're lower than it in the social order. Joke number 2. Forget LinkedIn. Here, your network is how many oxen you can borrow before the Lord notices. You spot a church steeple poking above the rooftops, a reminder of another power player. The church. Priests rank high, maybe even above knights because they've got God on speed dial. You're starting to see the layers. King at the top, lords and bishops below, knights and priests next, then peasants, and finally, you, the time-traveling nobody. You're tempted to bluff your way up, maybe claim you're a distant noble, but your accent and sneakers would sell you out faster than a bad Tinder date. As night creeps in, the manor's windows glow with torchlight, and you imagine the lord inside, feasting on something better than the villagers' stale bread. You're hungry, cold, and still dodging that sewage smell from your first step. Remember that squelch? You need a plan. Maybe charm a peasant for a meal or beg a servant for work. But every move feels like a gamble in a game where you don't know the rules. A bell tolls, deep and slow, and you feel the weight of this world pressing down. Joke number 3. You thought taxes were bad. Try owing your lord 3 days' work a week, plus your soul on Sundays. Welcome to the feudal life. You're still buzzing from the village's raw energy, the manor's looming walls a fresh reminder of your place, or lack thereof, in this medieval pecking order. The sun's gone, leaving a chilly dusk that makes you wish you'd brought a jacket instead of just a hoodie. You're back in the village now, weaving through muddy lanes where the scent of wood smoke and that persistent sewage whiff, yep, still haunting you, mix with something new. the earthy tang of freshly turned soil. You're about to learn what life's like for the folks at the bottom, the ones who keep this world spinning with sweat and sore backs. Get ready to roll up your sleeves, because today, you're one of them. You stumble across a field just beyond the village, where a group of peasants are still at it, even in the fading light. They're bent over, hacking at the earth with crude tools, wooden hoes and iron-tipped mattocks that look like they weigh a ton. A mainstream fact to ground you: agriculture was the heartbeat of medieval England, with most peasants spending their lives coaxing crops like wheat, barley, and rye from stubborn soil. The three-field system, rotating crops to keep the land fertile, was standard, but it's backbreaking work, and you're about to find out just how much. A grizzled man with a beard like a bird's nest spots you lurking. "Oi, you! Help or shove off!" he barks, tossing you a hoe. You catch it, barely, and join the line. The tool's heavier than it looks, and the ground's like concrete. You swing, and your arms scream after one hit. The others don't even glance up. They're in a rhythm, their movement's mechanical. You're sweating already, and a blister's forming on your palm. Joke number 1. You thought your gym membership was tough? Try plowing a field with a stick and no protein shakes. You're working alongside a woman who mutters about the Lord's tithe. 10% of their crops goes straight to him, no questions asked. You're starting to get why everyone's so grumpy. A quirky tidbit? Some peasants believed burying a toad in the field would boost the harvest. You glance at the dirt, half expecting to see a frog funeral. But it's just mud and misery. You're not sure if it's superstition or desperation, but you're not about to suggest it. Historians still argue whether peasants saw their labor as a fair trade for the Lord's protection, or just resented the endless grind. Some say they rebelled quietly. Others say they were too tired to care. Your back's aching and you're only 10 minutes in. The field stretches forever, and you realize this is their life, dawn to dusk, every day, except maybe Sundays if the priest's feeling generous. You trip over a clod of dirt, and a kid nearby snickers. He's maybe 12, already working like an adult. You try to make small talk, but he just shrugs and keeps digging. You're starting to feel the isolation, not just as a time traveler, but as someone who doesn't know the unspoken rules of this crew. A bell rings in the distance, signaling the end of the day. The peasants drop their tools, stretching and groaning. You're ready to collapse, but they're already trudging back to the village, chatting about supper. You follow, your legs like jelly. The woman from earlier nods at you, a rare sign you're not totally useless. Joke number 2. Forget employee of the month. Here, you're thrilled just to avoid a faceplant in the mud. You're starting to respect these folks, even if you're not sure you'll survive another hour. Back in the village, you pass a pen where pigs are snuffling in the dark. The air's thick with the smell of manure, and you're wondering how anyone sleeps through this? You're hungry, your hands are raw, and you've got no clue where you're crashing tonight. The peasants are heading to their huts, and you're tempted to beg for a spot by their fire. But you're still an outsider, and trust is hard won here. You remember that manor guard's glare? Was it only hours ago? And decide to keep moving. As you wander, you notice the fields aren't just for crops. There's a common pasture where cows and sheep graze, and you spot a shepherd dozing against a fence. Everything's shared here. Land, tools, even misery. But it's all under the Lord's watchful eye. You're starting to see the deal. Work the land, feed the village, keep the Lord happy, and maybe you won't starve. But one bad harvest, and it's game over. Joke number 3. You thought your job was high pressure? Try betting your dinner on whether it rains this week. The village is quiet now, save for the crackle of fires and a distant owl. You're alone again, your body aching from that brief taste of peasant life. You need food, shelter, and a way to blend in before someone decides you're more trouble than you're worth. The stars are out, sharper than you've ever seen, but they don't feel friendly. You're in deep, and tomorrow's another day of this grind. Time to figure out your next move. You're dragging your aching body through the village, the sting of that fieldwork still burning in your arms. The stars above are sharp, but they don't light the muddy paths, and you're dodging shadows that could be puddles or worse. That sewage smell from your first day, still trailing you like a bad ex, mixes with something new. Something bready maybe, but it's faint, teasing your empty stomach. You're starving, and it's time to face what passes for food in this medieval mess. Spoiler, it's not delivery, and it's definitely not pizza. You follow your nose to a cluster of huts where firelight flickers through cracked shutters. A woman's humming inside one, and you peek through a gap. She's kneading dough on a wooden table, her hands dusted with coarse flour. The room's smoky, with a pot simmering over a fire. Your mouth waters, but you're not invited. A mainstream fact to ground you: medieval diets were basic, built on bread, pottage, a veggie-heavy stew, and whatever protein you could scrape together. Think eggs or scraps of fish. Meat? That's for lords or lucky days. You're a peasant now, so adjust your expectations. You knock, figuring charm's your only shot. The woman opens the door, her face wary but not hostile. "What's your business?" she asks, eyeing your weird clothes. You mumble something about being a traveler, and she sighs, tossing you a hunk of bread. It's heavy, dark, and gritty, more gravel than gluten. You take a bite, and your teeth protest. A quirky tidbit? This bread's probably mixed with rye, peas, or even bark if times are tough. Some villagers swore chewing it slowly kept demons away. You're not sure about demons, but it's definitely fighting your jaw. You thank her and sit on a nearby stump, chewing like it's a full-time job. The bread's paired with a bowl of pottage she grudgingly hands over. Cabbage, leeks, and a mystery herb, all boiled into a grayish slop. It's bland but warm, and you're too hungry to care. Joke number 1. You thought airplane food was rough? Try pottage that tastes like it's mad at you. You're starting to get why everyone's so obsessed with harvests. Food's not guaranteed, and every bite feels like a small victory. Across the lane, a man's carving up a fish, its scales glinting in the firelight. He's muttering about the river being stingy this year. You're learning fast. Food's a gamble. Peasants grow what they can, forage what they can't, and pray the Lord doesn't take too much. Historians still argue whether famine was a constant threat or just a bad season's fault. Some say crop failures killed thousands, others say trade kept villages afloat. Either way, your empty stomach's not optimistic. You finish the pottage, scraping the bowl like it's fine dining. The woman's watching from her doorway, and you nod your thanks. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't chase you off either. You're starting to feel the village's rhythm. Work hard, eat what's there, sleep if you're lucky. But you're still an outsider, and this bread's not a daily guarantee. You need a plan to earn your keep, or you're begging again tomorrow. Joke number 2. Forget meal prep. Here, planning dinner means hoping the chickens don't die. Wandering back toward the village green, you pass a pen where pigs are rooting in the dirt. They're skinny, not the plump porkers you're used to, and you realize meat's a rare treat. A kid nearby's munching an apple, its skin bruised but edible. You're tempted to ask for a bite, but he bolts when you get close. Trust's earned here, and you're still the weird guy in sneakers. The air's colder now, and you're shivering, the bread and pottage already fading in your gut. You spot a tavern, or what passes for one, a low building with a sign that's just a carved mug. Inside, men are laughing, their voices rough. You're tempted, but ale costs money, and you've got none. Plus, you're pretty sure happy hour here involves more fists than discounts. Joke number 3. You thought your grocery bill was steep? Try bartering your only shoe for a sip of watery ale. You keep moving, the village settling into a quiet hum as fires die down. Your hunger's dulled, but it's not gone, and you're starting to see food as a currency, something to work for, fight for, or lose. The manor's silhouette looms in the distance, and you wonder what the Lord's eating tonight. Probably not pottage. You're alone again, the night pressing in, and that bread's sitting like a rock in your stomach. Tomorrow's another day of scrambling, and you're not sure you're ready. But for now, you need a corner to crash in before the cold gets meaner. You're still clutching that gritty hunk of bread's memory, your stomach barely appeased by the pottage, as you shuffle through the village's darkening lanes. The night's turned sharp, your hoodie no match for the damp chill seeping into your bones. The faint glow of firelight from huts is fading, and that sewage stink, yep, still your unwelcome shadow, now mingles with something sour, maybe rotting straw or worse. You're starting to notice how fragile everyone seems, coughing and limping, and it hits you. Staying alive here means dodging more than just bad food. Welcome to the medieval health scene, where feeling under the weather might mean game over. You pass a hut where a low moan leaks through the shutters. Curiosity pulls you closer, and you glimpse an old man on a straw pallet, his face slick with sweat. A woman's dabbing his forehead with a rag, muttering prayers. You back away, heart thudding. A mainstream fact to ground you. Medieval medicine was a gamble, leaning on herbal remedies, bloodletting, and prayers. The Black Death, still fresh in the 1350s, killed millions, and diseases like dysentery or smallpox were everyday threats. You're in a world without antibiotics, and that cough you've got from the cold? Better hope it's just a cold. The woman steps outside, tossing out a bucket of something you don't want to identify. She spots you and frowns. "Keep your distance, stranger," she snaps, wiping her hands on her apron. You nod, not arguing. A quirky tidbit? Some folks here swear by cures like eating crushed emeralds or wearing a live pigeon around your neck to draw out sickness. You're not sure what's weirder, the pigeon or the fact they think it works. You're definitely not volunteering to test it, especially after that pottage. Remember that gray slop? You wander toward the village green, trying to shake the image of that sick man. The air's thick with damp, and you're starting to feel every ache from yesterday's fieldwork. Those blisters are still raw. A man's hawking charms by the well, bits of bone and herbs tied with string. "Wards off the pestilence," he claims, but his own cough doesn't inspire confidence. You steer clear, remembering how fast disease spreads here. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood contagion or just blamed bad air. Some say they linked filth to sickness. Others say they leaned hard on God's wrath. Either way, you're not drinking from that well anytime soon. Your sneakers squelch as you dodge a puddle, and you're suddenly aware of how exposed you are. No home, no allies, no immunity to whatever's floating around. You pass a small herb garden, its plants wilted but fragrant. A woman's picking leaves, maybe for a remedy, and you're tempted to ask for advice. But she's focused, and you're still the outsider who showed up in weird pants. Joke number 1, you thought your HMO was bad? Try a doctor who thinks bleeding you fixes a fever. A dog's barking somewhere, and you jump, your nerves fried. You're starting to see why everyone's so jumpy. Sickness is a shadow here, and no one's got a safety net. You remember the bread lady's tired eyes? Was it only hours ago? And wonder if she's dodging illness too. You're itching to find shelter, but every hut feels like a risk. What if you catch something? Or worse, what if they think you're the one spreading it? Joke number 2. Forget get well soon cards. Here, don't die is the best you get. You spot a churchyard ahead, its stone wall a rare solid thing in this rickety world. A priest's chanting inside, probably praying for the sick. You're tempted to slip in, if only for warmth, but you're not sure you'd be welcome. The church is a big deal here, and you don't even know the right prayers. Plus, you're pretty sure your phone, still hidden in your pocket, would get you labeled a heretic faster than a sneeze. You keep moving, the cold gnawing at you. As you circle back toward the village's edge, you pass a pile of refuse. Bones, vegetable peels, and stuff you're not brave enough to name. Flies buzz, and you realize sanitation's a pipe dream. No wonder everyone's sick. Joke number 3. You thought your roommate's dirty dishes were gross? Try living where trash day means tossing scraps to the pigs. You're desperate for a plan. Maybe find a healer, barter for a charm, or just pray you don't cough tomorrow. The village is quiet now, save for that distant moan, and you're alone under a sky that feels too big. Health's a luxury here, and you're running low on luck. You're still shivering from the night's bite, the memory of that sick man's moan echoing in your head as you pick your way through the village. The moonlight barely cuts through the murk, and that sewage stench? Yep, it's basically your personal brand now. Mixes with something sharp, maybe vinegar or spilled ale. You're headed toward the village green again, drawn by a growing clamor. Voices, footsteps, and the clink of coins. It's market day, and if you thought the village was chaotic before, buckle up. You're about to dive into a medieval swap meet where haggling's an art, pickpockets are pros, and you've got nothing to trade but your wits. The green's transformed, packed with stalls made of splintered wood and canvas. Torches flicker, casting shadows on faces. Some eager, some shifty. You smell fresh bread, rotting fish, and something suspiciously like unwashed feet. Merchants shout over each other, hawking everything from turnips to rusty knives. A mainstream fact to ground you. Markets were the pulse of medieval villages, often held weekly, where locals bartered crops, tools, and gossip. Money's a thing, silver pennies mostly, but most folks swap goods, and you're starting to wish you'd grabbed more than a hoodie before time traveling. You weave through this crowd, dodging a cart piled with cabbages. A woman thrusts a basket of eggs at you, yelling, "3 for a farthing!" You pat your pockets, realizing you're broke in every century. She scoffs and moves on. A quirky tidbit: some merchants here might try to pass off magical relics, like a saint's toenail, to gullible buyers. You spot a guy waving a dubious bone, claiming it's from St. Cuthbert. You're not buying it, literally or figuratively, but the crowd's eating it up. Joke number 1. You thought Black Friday was wild? Try dodging a goose while bartering for a carrot. Your stomach growls. That pottage from yesterday, remember that gray mush? Long gone. You're tempted to swipe an apple from a nearby stall, but a kid's already eyeing you like he's the medieval FBI. Pickpockets are everywhere, and you're pretty sure your phone's the only thing worth stealing. You tuck it deeper in your pocket, remembering how your watch nearly got you labeled a witch way back on day 1. A burly man bumps you, muttering about clumsy strangers. You apologize, but he's already haggling over a sack of barley. You pause by a cloth stall, where a woman's selling rough wool and linen dyed in muddy blues and greens. You're starting to get why everyone's clothes look the same. Fashion's not a thing when you're one bad harvest from starving. Historians still argue whether markets were a lifeline or a trap. Some say they boosted local economies, others say they let lords and merchants fleece peasants. Either way, you're feeling the pinch. You try bartering your hoodie for a loaf of bread, but the baker laughs. "What's this, a jester's rag?" he says. Joke number 2. Forget crypto. Here, your net worth is how many onions you can carry. The market's a sensory overload. Dogs barking, a piper playing a wonky tune, and a fight breaking out over a short-changed deal. You steer clear, noticing how fast gossip travels. 2 women are whispering about a thief caught last week, his hand chopped off as punishment. You swallow hard, your empty pockets feeling heavier. You're starting to see the market's double edge. It's where you eat, connect, or get in deep trouble. A kid runs past, clutching a stolen pear, and you can't help but root for him. Survival's a hustle here. You spot a tanner's stall, the stench of hides making your eyes water. He's selling leather belts and shoes, but you're more interested in the cheese on the next table. You're about to try your luck again when a horn blares, some kind of signal. The crowd shifts, and you hear "Lord's men" muttered. Sure enough, a pair of armored guys swagger through, collecting taxes or maybe just intimidating folks. You shrink back, your outsider status screaming louder than ever. Joke number 3. You thought your landlord was pushy? Try dodging a knight who taxes your last potato. The market's winding down, torches guttering as stalls pack up. You're still hungry, still broke, and no closer to blending in. The village feels alive but ruthless, and you're just a ghost drifting through. You need a real plan. Maybe find a merchant who'll trade for labor or charm someone for a meal. The night's closing in, and you're alone again, the market's buzz fading into a cold, quiet hum. That manor's shadow looms in the distance, a reminder of who really runs this show. Time to move before you're the last one standing here. You're slipping away from the market's fading chaos. Your empty pockets and growling stomach a harsh reminder you're still a stranger in this muddy medieval maze. The night's fully settled, the air heavy with damp and that stubborn sewage stink. Yep, it's practically your signature scent now. You're weaving through the village, the market's torchlight replaced by the faint glow of hut fires. A new sound cuts through. A bell, deep and steady, calling from the stone church you glimpsed earlier. You're about to find out just how much the church rules this world. And trust me, it's not just about Sunday sermons. You're headed to Mass, whether you like it or not. You follow the villagers streaming toward the church, their faces a mix of duty and dread. The building's solid, its stone walls and arched doorway a stark contrast to the village's flimsy huts. Inside, it's dim, lit by tallow candles that smell like burnt grease. A mainstream fact to ground you: the Catholic Church was the backbone of medieval life in England, controlling not just faith but law, education, and even time. Those bells dictate everyone's day. You're in a world where God's word is law, and the priest's word is almost as scary. You squeeze into a pew, shoulder to shoulder with villagers who smell like sweat and straw. The priest, in a threadbare robe, drones in Latin, his voice bouncing off the stone. You don't understand a word, but the crowd's murmurs and bowed heads tell you this is serious business. A quirky tidbit? Some folks here believe missing Mass could curse their crops or make their cows go dry. You're half tempted to sneak out, but the woman next to you shoots a glare like she's channeling the Inquisition. Joke number 1. You thought your group chat was judgmental? Try skipping church when the whole village is watching. The sermon's about sin, big surprise, and you're starting to feel like everyone's staring at your sneakers. You're an outsider, and in a place where faith is everything, that's dangerous. You try to mimic the crowd, kneeling when they kneel, but your timing's off, and a kid snickers. You're starting to get why the church is so powerful. It's not just about salvation, it's about control. The priest collects tithes, grain, eggs, even a scrawny chicken handed over grudgingly. You've got nothing to give, and that makes you nervous. Historians still argue whether the church was a comfort or a burden. Some say it gave hope, others say it bled peasants dry. You're leaning toward the latter. You're itching to leave, but Mass drags on. All chants and incense that's making your head spin. You remember that pottage lady's tired nod, was it really yesterday? And wonder if she's here, praying for a better harvest. The church feels like the manor's twin, another giant looming over these folks, demanding loyalty. You're starting to see the village as a web, with the Lord and priest pulling the strings. Joke number 2. Forget thoughts and prayers. Here, prayers are your rent and the landlord's God. A man coughs behind you, and you flinch. That sick man's moan from last night, still haunting you, flashing back. Disease is everywhere, and the church's answer is more prayers, not medicine. You're starting to feel trapped, the pews closing in. The priest's eyes scan the crowd, and you swear they linger on you. Your phone's still hidden, but you're paranoid. It's glowing through your pocket. One wrong move, and you're the heretic everyone's whispering about. You keep your head down, mimicking the crowd's final amen. Mass ends, and you shuffle out with the villagers, the cold air a relief after the stuffy church. Some linger, gossiping about the sermon or who skipped it. You're alone again, the bells echo fading. The church's grip is real, and you're starting to feel its weight. You need a plan. Maybe play the pious card to win some trust or steer clear of priests altogether. Joke number 3. You thought your boss's meetings were endless? Try a Latin sermon that feels like it's outlasted the Roman Empire. The village is quiet now, save for a dog's bark, and you're back in the dark, wondering how to navigate a world where faith is both shield and shackle. Time to find shelter before the night gets meaner. You're slipping out of the church's shadow, the priest's Latin chants still ringing in your ears as you step back into the village's chilly night. The air's thick with mist, that sewage stench, your old friend by now, mixing with the faint tang of hay and horse sweat. The village is hushed, but you catch a new sound, clanging metal and gruff shouts, coming from a field near the manor. Curiosity pulls you toward it, your sneakers squelching in the mud. You're about to meet the knights, the medieval equivalent of rock stars with swords, and get a front row seat to their world of honor, violence, and some serious ego. Buckle up. You creep closer, hiding behind a low hedge. In the torchlit field, a dozen men are training, their armor glinting as they swing swords and bash shields. They're not the shiny knights of fairy tales. Think dented helmets and patched chainmail. A mainstream fact to ground you: knights were the elite warriors of medieval England, bound by a chivalric code that mixed honor, loyalty, and combat skills. By the 1350s, they're key to the Lord's power, fighting his battles and keeping peasants in line. You're watching a live-action movie, except the blood's real. One knight, bigger than the rest, slams his sword into a wooden dummy, splintering it. The others cheer, but there's tension. Another knight shoves him, sparking a shouting match. You're starting to see the code's not just noble vows, it's a pressure cooker. A quirky tidbit? Knights sometimes wore padded undergarments called gambesons that smelled like a gym locker after a month without washing. You catch a whiff from here and believe it. You're glad you're downwind, but you're not sure if it's the gambesons or that market fish stall's leftovers. Remember that rotting stench? You shift for a better view, and a twig snaps underfoot. A squire, a scrawny teen polishing a sword, spots you and yells, "Who's there?" You freeze, heart pounding. Joke number 1. You thought your coworkers' passive-aggressive emails were bad? Try sneaking past a knight who thinks intruder means target practice. You mutter something about being lost and back away, hands up. The squire glares but doesn't chase you, probably because you look too pathetic to bother. You retreat to a safer distance, still watching. The knights are practicing for something, maybe a tournament or a looming war. You overhear French and king's orders, and your stomach twists. Historians still argue whether chivalry was a genuine ideal or just propaganda. Some say knights protected the weak. Others say they were glorified thugs serving lords. You're leaning toward thugs, especially when one knight kicks a squire for dropping a shield. You're starting to get why villagers steer clear of these guys. The training's intense, all sweat and steel, but there's a strange grace to it, like a deadly dance. You're half impressed, half terrified. You remember the church's weight, that sermon felt like hours ago, and realize knights and priests are two sides of the same coin. Power, backed by fear. You're nobody here, and sneaking around armed men is begging for trouble. Your phone's still hidden, but your paranoid one glint could get you skewered. Joke number 2. Forget dress for success. Here, dress wrong means you're the knight's new sparring dummy. A horn blows and the knights break off, heading toward the manor. You're alone again, the field now just shadows and trampled grass. You're starting to feel the village's pulse. Work, pray, fight, survive. You need a plan to avoid these guys, maybe blend in with the peasants, or find a less stabby crowd. The manor's lights glow in the distance, a reminder of the Lord pulling all the strings. Joke number 3. You thought your gym bro was intense. Try a knight who lifts swords and egos for a living. The night's colder now, and you're exposed. No shelter, no allies. Time to move before someone decides you're worth chasing. You're still catching your breath from sneaking away from the knight's training, their clanging swords fading into the night as you slink back toward the village. The air's damp, that sewage stink, your loyal sidekick, now laced with the acrid bite of torch smoke. Your heart's still racing, and you're hyper-aware of every shadow. Those nights didn't seem like the let's talk it out type. You're picking your way through the muddy lanes when you hear a new commotion. Raised voices, a crowd gathering near the village green. Something's up, and it doesn't sound friendly. You're about to witness medieval justice, and it's not going to be pretty. Brace yourself for a crash course in crime and punishment, where fair trial is more suggestion than reality. You creep closer, blending into the growing crowd. Torches cast jittery light on a wooden platform where a man's tied to a post, his face bruised and his tunic torn. A burly official, maybe a bailiff, stands over him, barking accusations of theft. The crowd's a mix of jeers and grim silence. A mainstream fact to ground you. Medieval justice in England was harsh, often public, and designed to deter. By the 1350s, crimes like stealing livestock could mean a whipping, a fine, or worse, think branding or a chopped hand. You're watching a system where mercy's rare, and the Lord's word is law. The bailiff holds up a stolen goose, its feathers limp. The crowd roars, and you wince. The accused mumbles a defense, something about hunger, but the bailiff cuts him off. A quirky tidbit? Some villages used hue and cry, where everyone had to chase a criminal or face a fine themselves. You imagine sprinting after a thief with that pottage lady? Remember her gray slop? And it's almost funny. Almost. Right now, the mood's dark, and you're glad you didn't swipe that market apple yesterday. Joke number 1. You thought your parking ticket was rough? Try explaining, "I was hungry," to a guy with a whip. You shift uncomfortably. your sneakers sinking into the mud. The bailiff calls for witnesses, and a woman steps forward, claiming the goose was hers. The crowd's buzzing, but there's no lawyer, no jury, just the bailiff's judgment. You're starting to see how exposed you are. One wrong move, like flashing your phone, still hidden since that kid gawked at it, and you could be up there. Historians still argue whether medieval justice was about order or just fear. Some say it kept villages stable, others say it crushed the desperate. You're leaning toward crush, especially when the bailiff cracks a whip and the man flinches. The punishment's quick. A public whipping, 10 lashes. You look away as the first strike lands, the crowd's cheers drowning out the man's cries. Your stomach twists, you're not used to this, and it shows. A kid nearby mimics the whip, laughing, and you realize this is normal here. You remember the night's training, was it just hours ago? And see the pattern. Power, whether it's a sword or a whip, rules everything. You're nobody, and that's never felt clearer. Joke number 2. Forget innocent until proven guilty. Here, it's guilty until the Lord says otherwise. The whipping ends, and the man's cut loose, stumbling into the crowd. Some jeer, others slip away, their faces unreadable. The bailiff's already moving on, shouting about next week's court. You're starting to get why villagers keep their heads down. Trouble's a magnet, and you're wearing weird clothes in a world that hates different. You need to blend in, maybe find work or a low-key ally, before someone decides you're the next thief. The manor's shadow looms nearby, a reminder of who's really calling the shots. You turn to leave, but a woman grabs your arm. "You saw that, Keep your hands clean, stranger," she warns, her eyes sharp. You nod, shaken, and pull away. The crowd's thinning, the green returning to its quiet self. Joke number 3. You thought your HOA was strict? Try living where neighborhood watch means a public flogging. The night's colder now, and you're alone again, the torchlight gone. You need shelter, food, something to anchor you in this brutal world. The village feels like a trap, and you're still figuring out how to dodge its jaws. Time to move before the next bell tolls. You're still rattled from the whipping on the green, the man's cries echoing as you slip away from the village center. The night's thick with fog, muffling sounds, but not that sewage stink. Your nose has given up complaining. Your sneakers are caked in mud, and every step feels heavier, like the village itself is weighing you down. You're itching to put distance between you and that brutal scene, so you decide to hit the road, literally. You're about to learn what travel's like in medieval England, where road trip means bandits, broken bridges, and a whole lot of regret. Good luck getting anywhere fast. You follow a rutted path leading out of the village, the manor's silhouette fading behind you. The road is more like a cow trail, all rocks and puddles, twisting through fields and scraggly woods. A mainstream fact to ground you: travel in 14th century England was slow and dangerous, with most roads little more than dirt tracks. Only the wealthy rode horses. Peasants walked, and you're definitely in the walking club. You're aiming for the next village. Maybe they're less whip-happy, but you're already questioning this plan. The darkness is oppressive, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl. You're clutching a stick you found, hoping it looks intimidating. A quirky tidbit? Travelers sometimes carried passports scratched on parchment to prove they weren't vagrants. But you've got nothing but your hoodie and a phone that's useless without Wi-Fi. You remember that thief's bruised face, still fresh from the green, and wonder if looking like a vagrant might get you tied to a post. Joke number 1. You thought your GPS was unreliable? Try navigating with stars and a prayer you don't step in cow dung. Your legs ache from yesterday's fieldwork. Those blisters are now old friends. And the path's getting worse. Mud sucks at your shoes, and a fallen branch nearly trips you. You hear a rustle in the bushes and freeze. Bandits are real here, and you're an easy mark. You grip your stick tighter, heart pounding, but it's just a fox, its eyes glinting before it bolts. You exhale, but the fear lingers. Historians still argue whether bandits were desperate outcasts or organized gangs. Some say they targeted lone travelers like you. Others say they hit rich merchants. Either way, you're not feeling lucky. You keep moving, the path dipping into a gully where a rickety bridge crosses a stream. The wood creaks under your weight, and you're halfway across when you hear voices, low, rough, and close. You crouch, peering through the fog. Two men are lurking downstream, their shapes barely visible. They're muttering about easy pickings. You're pretty sure that's you. Joke number 2. Forget road rage. Here, traffic means dodging guys who think your shoes are worth killing for. You backtrack quietly, praying the bridge doesn't squeak. You detour through a field, thorns snagging your jeans. The stars are no help, and you're starting to miss the village's chaos. Even that pottage seems cozy now. Travel's not just hard, it's a gamble. No inns, no road signs, just endless chances to get lost or robbed. You remember the knight's training, that sweaty swordplay feels like days ago, and wish you had one of them as a bodyguard. But you're alone, and every snap of a twig makes you jump. After what feels like hours, you spot a faint glow, maybe another village. Your legs are screaming, and you're thirsty, that well water you skipped suddenly sounding less gross. But you're not there yet, and the path's turning swampy. Joke number 3. You thought your commute was a slog? Try hiking through a bog while praying you don't meet Robin Hood's sketchy cousin. You're starting to get why nobody leaves the village unless they have to. You need a plan. Maybe find a cart to hitch a ride or stick to daylight travel. For now, you're just focused on not becoming bandit bait. The glow's closer, but so's the dawn, and you're running on fumes in a world that doesn't care if you make it. You're still trudging through the night, the faint glow of that distant village your only lifeline after dodging those shady figures by the bridge. The path's a muddy nightmare. And that sewage stink? Yep, it's hitched a ride across the countryside. Now mingles with wet earth and pine. Your legs are screaming, your stick's useless against the cold, and you're regretting this whole let's travel idea. But you're not turning back. Not yet. You've stumbled onto a new plan. Sneak into the manor you saw back in the village. It's risky, but maybe you'll overhear something useful, like how to survive this medieval mess. You're about to play spy in a world where caught means more than a stern warning. You loop back toward the village, the manor's stone walls looming as you approach. It's quieter now. The knight's training long over. Those sword swings still haunt you. The gate's guarded, but a side wall looks climbable, its stones uneven enough for a foothold. A mainstream fact to ground you. Manors were power hubs in 14th century England, where lords schemed, feasted, and kept their grip on the land. Sneaking in's a terrible idea, but you're desperate for answers, or at least a warm corner. You scramble up, scraping your hands, and drop into a courtyard. The air's warmer here, scented with hay and roasting meat. Way better than pottage. Remember that gray slop? You crouch behind a barrel, heart pounding. Torches light the great hall's windows, and you hear voices, deep, heated, and definitely not friendly. You creep closer, peering through a crack. Lords in fine tunics are arguing over a map, tossing around words like taxes and rebellion. A quirky tidbit? Medieval lords sometimes used astrology to plan battles, consulting star charts like they're checking Twitter. You spot a weird diagram on the table. Maybe it's the zodiac, maybe it's just bad art. Either way, these guys are stressed. One lord with a beard like a Viking slams his fist. "The king'll have our heads if we don't pay," he growls. Another, younger, snaps back about arming more knights. You're starting to get it. This manor's a pressure cooker, and the lord's juggling loyalty to the king, his knights, and those grumpy peasants you worked with. Feels like ages ago. You're nobody, but eavesdropping feels like holding a grenade. Joke number 1. You thought your office politics were bad? Try scheming when the wrong word gets you beheaded. You shift for a better view, and your shoe scuffs a stone. A dog barks inside, and you freeze. A servant glances out, but you duck, praying your hoodie blends with the shadows. Historians still argue whether manor intrigues were about power or survival. Some say lords plotted to climb the ranks. Others say they were just trying to keep their heads. You're betting on both, especially with that map and those raised voices. You're tempted to bolt, but you need intel. Maybe something about food or work to keep you alive. The argument shifts to the village. Something about a bad harvest and uppity villains. You remember the whipped thief? That crowd's jeers still sting. and realize these lords don't care about peasants. They're just numbers on a ledger. Your stomach twists. You're less than a number. A stranger who shouldn't be here. The dog's still barking, and you're starting to sweat despite the cold. Joke number 2. Forget caught on camera. Here, caught means explaining your sneakers to a guy with a battle axe. You inch away, back toward the wall, when a door creaks open. A servant steps out, dumping a bucket of scraps. You hold your breath, blending into the dark. He doesn't see you, but the close call's a wake-up call. This manor's a viper's nest, and you're a mouse. You climb out, scraping your knee, and hit the ground running. The village is silent, save for a distant owl. You're alone again, the manor's secrets buzzing in your head. You need a plan. Maybe use what you heard to blend in or steer clear of these power games altogether. Joke number 3. You thought your neighbor's drama was intense? Try overhearing a lord who'd sell his cousin for a better castle. Dawn's close, and you're exposed, no shelter, no food. Time to find a hideout before the world wakes up. You're still buzzing from your manor escape. The lord's heated voices replaying in your head as you slip back into the village's dark lanes. The fog's thicker now, muffling your steps. But that sewage stink, your eternal +1, cuts through, mixed with damp straw and something faintly smoky. Your scraped knee stings, and your heart's still racing from that barking dog, way too close for comfort. You're starting to feel the village's pulse, its power plays and fragile order, but now it's about to get real. You hear shouts and see torches flaring near the fields. A peasant revolt's brewing, and you're caught in the crossfire. Time to see what happens when the bottom pushes back. You creep toward the noise, keeping to the shadows. A crowd's gathered, maybe 30 villagers, men and women, clutching pitchforks and sickles. Their faces are hard, lit by torchlight, and they're chanting about fair shares and no more tithes. A mainstream fact to ground you. Peasant revolts, like the famous 1381 Peasants' Revolt, were sparked by heavy taxes and unfair labor demands. In the 1350s, tensions are simmering post-Black Death, with fewer workers demanding better treatment. You're witnessing a spark, and it's volatile. A man with a scarred face is leading, his voice raw as he rails against the Lord's latest tax. You recognize him from the fields, that grizzled guy who tossed you a hoe. "We starve while he feasts," he roars, and the crowd roars back. A quirky tidbit? Some rebels believed a great society would rise if they overthrew lords, a utopian dream whispered in alehouses. You're not sure if Scarface buys it, but his rage is real. You're torn. Part of you cheers their guts. Part of you remembers the whipped thief, those lashes still echo, and knows this could end badly. Joke number 1. You thought your union meeting was tense? Try rallying with a pitchfork and a death wish. You stay at the crowd's edge, your hoodie blending with the dark. The manor's not far, and you spot knights moving in, their armor clinking. The crowd doesn't back down, but you feel the shift. Anger's turning to fear. You're nobody here, and picking a side feels like picking a noose. Historians still argue whether revolts were desperate cries or organized resistance. Some say peasants planned in secret, others say they just snapped. You're betting on snapped, especially when a woman hurls a rock at a knight, and the crowd surges. You back up, heart pounding. A knight barks orders, and the peasants hesitate. Scarface shouts, "We're no serfs tonight!" But a crossbow bolt whizzes past and someone screams. You duck behind a cart, your stick still clutched from the road, feeling pathetic. You remember the manor's map talk. Was it just hours ago? And wonder if the Lord saw this coming. You're starting to see the village as a powder keg. Lords, knights, peasants, all ready to blow. Joke number 2. Forget team-building retreat. Here, unity means not getting skewered by your own side. The knights advance and the crowd scatters, some swinging tools, others running. You bolt too, dodging a fallen torch. The fields are chaos. Shouts, clangs, and the sickening thud of metal on flesh. You're not sticking around to see who wins. You sprint toward the village, lungs burning, and hide behind a hut. The revolt's crumbling, but the anger's still there, smoldering. You're shaking, realizing how fast things spiral here. Your sneakers are soaked, your phone's useless, and you're paranoid one wrong step lands you in a dungeon. The noise fades as survivors slip away. You peek out, seeing torches retreat toward the manor. The fields are quiet, but you spot a body. Maybe Scarface, maybe not. Your stomach twists. You're alone again, the village eerily still. You need a plan. Maybe lie low, find a peasant who'll hide you, or get out before the Lord cracks down. Joke number 3. You thought your protest march was bold? Try facing knights who think negotiation is a sword to the gut. Dawn's creeping in, gray and cold, and you're exposed, no shelter, no allies. Time to move before the manor's wrath finds you. You're still reeling from the revolt's chaos, the clash of pitchforks and knights' swords fading into an eerie quiet as you huddle behind a village hut. The dawn's gray light is creeping in, but the air's heavy with fog, and that relentless sewage stink. Yep, it's practically your shadow now. Your heart's pounding, your scraped knee throbs from last night's manor climb, and the memory of that fallen rebel, maybe Scarface, twists your gut. You're starting to feel the village's underbelly, but now it's time to face something else. The wild beliefs that glue this world together. Superstitions rule here, and you're about to navigate a maze of folklore where reality and fear blur. Good luck telling what's real. You slip away from the hut, sticking to the village's edge where the fields meet a scraggly wood. The revolt's aftermath has everyone on edge, and you're dodging curious eyes. You hear whispers from a group of women washing clothes by a stream, talk of curses and omens. A mainstream fact to ground you. Medieval England was steeped in superstition, with folklore shaping daily life. From charms to ward off evil to tales of witches causing crop failures, belief in the supernatural was as real as the Lord's taxes. You're in a world where a black cat crossing your path might get you shunned. One woman, her hands red from cold water, mutters about a hag who soured the village's milk. The others nod, blaming last week's bad butter on her spells. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers thought tying a red thread around a cow's tail could block witchcraft. You spot a frayed string on a nearby fence and wonder if it's cow insurance or just laundry gone rogue. You're tempted to laugh, but the women's faces are dead serious. You remember the whipped thief's desperate eyes, feels like days ago, and realize fear drives this place. Fear of lords, knights, and now, invisible curses. Joke number 1. You thought your horoscope was intense? Try living where a spilled salt pinch means the devil's RSVP'd. You keep moving, the woods looming closer. A man's carving a symbol into a tree, maybe a cross, maybe something older. He glares at you, and you hurry past, your sneakers crunching on frost. You're starting to see how superstition's a survival tool, explaining why crops fail or babies die when medicine's just prayers and pigeon necks. That cure still gives you chills. Historians still argue whether these beliefs unified villages or fueled paranoia. Some say shared rituals built trust, others say they sparked witch hunts. You're betting on paranoia, especially when you overhear a kid whisper about a stranger bringing bad luck. Guess who that sounds like? Your hoodie's damp and you're shivering, the revolt's adrenaline long gone. You spot a charm dangling from a hut's door, bones and feathers tied with twine. It's creepy but oddly beautiful, like a grim Etsy project. You're tempted to ask about it, but the village feels like a minefield after the revolt. One wrong word, and you're the hag they're blaming. You remember the manor's astrology chart, those lords and their star obsession, and realize even the elite buy into this stuff. Joke number 2. Forget trust the science. Here, trust the toad buried under the barn is the vibe. A crow caws and you jump, half expecting it to curse you. The women by the stream are gone, but their whispers linger. You're starting to question everything. Is that ache in your knee just a scrape? Or did you cross a fairy ring? You laugh it off, but it's shaky. Your phone's still hidden, but you're paranoid it's a hex waiting to happen. You need a plan. Maybe lean into their beliefs to blend in or steer clear of anyone waving a charm. The woods are tempting, but tales of spirits in the trees make you hesitate. Joke number 3. You thought your aunt's crystal collection was extra. Try dodging a village that thinks your sneakers summon demons. The village is waking, smoke curling from huts. You're alone, exposed, and running low on nerve. You need shelter, food, and a way to dodge the superstition spotlight. The manor's shadow still looms, and you wonder if the Lord's blaming curses for the revolt. Dawn's fully here, cold and unforgiving, and you're a stranger in a world where belief is both armor and trap. Time to move before someone decides you're the bad omen. You're still skulking near the village's edge, the morning fog wrapping you like a damp blanket while that sewage stink, your grim companion, clings to the air, now spiked with the bite of frost. The crow's caw and those eerie charms are still rattling you, and you're hyper-aware of every glance from passing villagers. Superstitions got everyone twitchy after last night's revolt. You're starting to feel like a hunted fox, but winter's closing in, and it's about to make this medieval survival game a lot harder. You're about to learn what it takes to endure a brutal season where staying warm and fed is a victory. Wrap up if you can. You trudge toward the village center, your breath puffing in the icy air. Huts are shuttered tight, smoke trickling from chimneys as families huddle inside. Your hoodie's useless against the cold, and your scraped knee, from that manor wall climb, aches in the chill. A mainstream fact to ground you: winters in 14th century England were harsh, with short days and scarce food. Most villagers survived on stored grain and whatever they could hunt or forage. But a bad harvest, like the one those lords were griping about, meant starvation loomed. You're in a world where cozy season is just a cruel myth. You spot a man stacking firewood outside a hut, his hands cracked and red. He's muttering about not enough for January, and you realize fuel's as precious as food. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers believed rubbing ash on door frames kept frost spirits away. You see smudges on a nearby hut and wonder if it's superstition or just sloppy chores. Either way, you're freezing, and the thought of a fire is pure fantasy. You remember the pottage lady's warm hearth, feels like a lifetime ago, and wish you'd begged for a spot by her fire. Joke number 1. You thought your heater breaking was bad? Try chopping wood with frostbite and no gloves. You approach the man, hoping to trade labor for warmth. Need help? You ask, your voice shaky. He squints, sizing up your weird clothes, but nods. You stack logs, your blistered hands, from that field work, screaming. The work's numbing, but it's something. He tosses you a stale crust of bread as thanks. Better than nothing, but barely. You're starting to get it. Winter's a math problem. Calories in, heat on, or you're done. Historians still argue whether winter unified villages or broke them. Some say shared hardship built bonds. Others say it turned neighbors into rivals over the last log. You're betting on rivals, especially when a woman glares at you for lingering near her woodpile. Your stomach's gnawing, and the bread's gone in 2 bites. You wander toward the village green, where a few souls are bartering for turnips and dried fish. The market's sparse compared to last time. Those shouting merchants seem so distant, and everyone's haggling like it's life or death. You're tempted to try your luck, but your empty pockets and outsider status make you a target. You remember the revolt's fallout. That body in the field still haunts you, and keep your head down. Joke number 2. Forget winter blues. Here, it's winter. Please don't let me freeze in a ditch. You pass a pen where pigs are huddling, their breath steaming. They're thinner now, and you realize meat's off the menu until spring, if you make it that far. The cold sinking deeper, and you're starting to cough, that sick man's moan from the healer's hut flashing back. No one's offering shelter, and the church's stone walls look tempting, but you're still paranoid about your phone sparking heresy rumors. You need a plan. Maybe barter for a blanket, or find a barn to sneak into. The manor's glow taunts you in the distance. Its warmth reserved for lords, not you. A kid runs past, clutching a rabbit he probably snared. You're jealous, and it's not just the meat. His purpose, his place, feels light years from your aimless drifting. Joke number 3. You thought your snow day was rough? Try surviving when Netflix and chill means staring at a wall and hoping your toes don't fall off. The village is battening down, and you're exposed. No fire, no food. Just a stubborn will to keep moving. Winter's only starting, and it's already clear. This season doesn't care if you're a time traveler or a peasant. You need to outsmart it, fast. You're still shivering in the village's icy grip, the winter's bite sinking deeper as you shuffle through lanes now dusted with frost. That sewage stink, your nose has just accepted it, mixes with the sharp scent of burning wood, a cruel tease of warmth you can't afford. Your stomach's gnawing after that measly bread crust, and your cough's getting worse, each rasp a reminder of that sick man's moan, still haunting you. The village is hunkering down, but you're drawn to a new sound, jingling coins and the creak of carts near the market's edge. Merchants are here, and you're about to dive into the shaky economy of medieval trade. Time to see if you can hustle your way to a meal or at least learn how this world's coins and barters work. You reach a clearing where a handful of traders are unloading goods. Sacks of grain, bundles of wool, and barrels that smell faintly of ale. Their cloaks are finer than the villagers, but their faces are just as hard. A mainstream fact to ground you. Trade in 14th century England was the lifeblood of villages, linking them to towns and beyond. Merchants dealt in wool, grain, and spices, often bartering but increasingly using silver pennies. You're in a cash-poor world, and your empty pockets are a bigger problem than ever. A merchant with a patchy beard is haggling with a villager over a sack of barley. 2 pennies, no less, he snaps, but the villager offers a chicken instead. You watch, fascinated. This is eBay, medieval style. A quirky tidbit? Some merchants carried touchstones to test silver's purity, rubbing coins to check for fakes. You spot patchy beard eyeing a coin suspiciously, and you're half tempted to offer your phone as collateral. Then you remember the witchy watch panic, way back on day 1, and keep it hidden. Joke number 1. You thought your Venmo was slow? Try waiting for a goose to clinch the deal. You step closer, hoping to barter your labor for food. The merchant glances at your hoodie, smirking. "What's a ragamuffin like you got to offer?" he asks. You mumble about stacking barrels, and he tosses you a bruised apple to prove yourself. You're starving, so you take it, biting into its sour flesh while hauling crates. Your blistered hands, from that field work, scream, but you're learning. Trade's a game of leverage, and you've got none. Historians still argue whether merchants were village saviors or profiteers. Some say they brought wealth, others say they jacked up prices for desperate folks. You're leaning toward profiteers, especially when Patchy Beard pockets an extra coin while the villager's distracted. Your apple's gone, and you're still hungry. You notice the market's tension. Villagers are bartering fiercely, aware winter's eating their stores. You remember the revolt's rage. Those pitchforks feel so recent. And sense the same desperation here. A woman's arguing over wool, saying the manor's tax left her nothing. You're starting to see the economy's web. Lords take, merchants deal, peasants scrape. You're below scraping, a stranger with no goods or coin. Joke number 2. Forget side hustle. Here, your hustle's convincing someone you're not a thief. You finish stacking, and Patchy Beard grunts, handing you a stale oatcake. It's dry as cardboard, but you scarf it, dodging a cart that nearly clips you. The market's winding down, traders packing up as the frost thickens. You overhear talk of town fairs and Hanseatic ships, but it's all noise. You're stuck in this village, no ticket out. Your cough's worse, and you're paranoid it's more than cold air. You need shelter, maybe a merchant who'll trade for more work, but trust's thin. You remember the manor's scheming lords? That map talk still lingers. And wonder if they're hiking taxes again. A kid steals a turnip and bolts, merchants shouting after him. You sympathize. You almost swipe that market apple yourself. The clearing's emptying, and you're alone again. The oatcake's sitting like a rock in your gut. Joke number 3. You thought your bank fees were steep? Try trading your last shred of dignity for a vegetable. You need a plan. Maybe follow a merchant to a bigger town or stick to village scraps. The manor's glow taunts you, its warmth a world away. Winter's tightening its grip, and you're running low on tricks. Time to move before the cold or a merchant's suspicion catches you. You're still lingering near the market's edge. The merchant's stale oatcake barely denting your hunger as you shuffle through the frosty village lanes. The air's sharp, That sewage stink, your grim tagalong, now tangled with the faint musk of wool and damp earth. Your cough's getting raspier, and the winter chills sinking into your bones, making that manor's glow, still taunting you, feel like a cruel mirage. The market's bustle showed you the village's economic pulse, but now it's time to shift focus. You're about to notice the women around you, nuns, midwives, wives, and see how they navigate a world stacked against them. Get ready for a glimpse into their lives, where grit and cunning are the real currency. You wander toward this village center, passing a hut where a woman's rocking a crying baby, her face etched with exhaustion. She's singing softly, but her eyes are sharp, scanning for trouble. A mainstream fact to ground you. Women in 14th century England were bound by a patriarchal system, their roles defined as wives, mothers, or nuns. Most worked alongside men in fields or trades but had little legal power. Land and titles passed through men, and lords called the shots. You're starting to see her as more than background noise. She's a survivor in a man's game. You pause, noticing another woman nearby, her hands stained with herbs. She's a midwife, maybe, slipping into a hut with a bundle of cloths. A quirky tidbit? Midwives often doubled as healers, using remedies like fennel tea for birth pains or chanting charms to ease labor. You spot a sprig of something green tucked in her belt, and wonder if it's medicine or superstition. Those ash-smudged doors still linger. You're tempted to ask for a cough remedy, but her brisk stride says she's got no time for strangers. You remember the pottage lady's grudging kindness, ages ago now, and realize women here are the village's backbone, even if no one says it. Joke number 1. You thought your multitasking was impressive? Try birthing a baby, weeding a field, and dodging a lord's tax collector. You keep moving, passing a church where a nun's sweeping the steps. Her habit's patched, but her posture's rigid, like she's guarding something. You recall the church's weight, that endless Latin sermon, and figure nuns have it rough, cloistered, celibate, and still under the priest's thumb. You're starting to get the hierarchy. Lords, knights, priests, men, then women, with you somewhere below the pigs. Historians still argue whether women found power in these roles. Some say midwives and abbesses wielded quiet influence. Others say they were just cogs in a male machine. You're leaning toward influence, especially when the midwife shoots a glare at a loitering man and he scurries off. Your sneakers crunch on frost, and you're coughing harder, drawing stares. A woman hauling firewood mutters about strange folk and hurries away. You're an outsider, and women here are too busy surviving to trust you. You pass a girl, maybe 15, mending a tunic with quick stitches. She's probably destined for marriage or a convent. No say in either. You feel a pang. She's got dreams maybe, but this world doesn't care. You remember the revolt's rage. Those pitchforks feel so close, and wonder if women fueled it too, whispering defiance over laundry. Joke number 2. Forget glass ceiling. Here, it's a stone wall, and you're expected to smile while you hit it. You're freezing, your scraped knee aching, and the village feels like a puzzle you can't crack. You need a plan. Maybe charm a midwife for medicine, or barter with a wife for shelter. But trust's scarce, and your weird clothes aren't helping. The manor's shadow looms. Its lords blind to these women's grind. A bell tolls, slow and heavy, signaling noon. You're alone again, the village's rhythm marching on without you. Joke number 3. You thought your group project was unfair. Try being a woman here, doing all the work and getting none of the credit. Winter's tightening, and you're running low on warmth and hope. Time to find a corner to regroup before the cold, or a suspicious glance catches you. You're still drifting through the village, the noon bell's echo fading as the winter sun does little to warm your shivering frame. That sewage stink, your unwelcome shadow, mixes with the faint tang of boiled cabbage wafting from a hut, teasing your empty stomach. The women's resilience, midwives, wives, nuns, has you rethinking this world's pulse, but now a new tension's rising. You catch snippets of talk about muster and levies near the manor, and the air feels heavier, like a storm's brewing. War's shadow is creeping in, and you're about to feel its weight in a village already stretched thin. Time to see how conflict looms over this medieval life, and what it means for a stranger like you. You head toward the village green, where men are gathering, some with pitchforks, others with rusty spears. They're not rebels this time. That revolt's chaos still burns in your memory, but conscripts, called up by the Lord's men. A knight in dented armor barks orders, his voice sharp. A mainstream fact to ground you. War was a constant in 14th century England, especially during the Hundred Years' War with France, which kicked off in the 1330s. Lords raised armies from villages, forcing peasants to fight or pay to stay home. You're watching a draft, and it's grim. The knight's pointing at a cart loaded with weapons, bent swords, wooden shields, and a few bows. A quirky tidbit? Some archers believe chewing garlic before battle scared off enemies and bad spirits. You spot a man stuffing his mouth with something pungent and hope it's just for courage, not ghosts. You're starting to feel the village's fear. War means losing fathers, sons, or crops if fields go untended. You remember the manor's heated map talk, those lords scheming over taxes, and realize they're probably funding this fight. Joke number 1. You thought your draft email was stressful? Try dodging a real draft where opt-out means bankruptcy or a noose. You linger at the crowd's edge, your hoodie drawing glances. A boy, barely 16, is handed a spear too big for him, his face pale. You're nobody here, and joining this march is a death wish, but running's not much better. Deserters get hunted. Historians still argue whether peasants saw war as duty or disaster. Some say they fought for honor. Others say they were coerced, dreaming of loot that never came. You're betting on coerced, especially when a man mutters about dying for the king's folly and gets a knight's glare. Your cough's worse, rattling your chest, and you're paranoid it's marking you as weak, or worse, sick. You remember the midwife's herb-stained hands? Was it just this morning? And wish you'd begged for a remedy. The knight's scanning the crowd, and you duck behind a cart, your scraped knee throbbing. War's not just a distant threat. It's draining this village. Men, food, hope. You're starting to see the manor as a machine, spitting out orders while peasants pay the price. Joke number 2. Forget team effort. Here, war effort means you're cannon fodder unless you're rich. A horn blows and the men start marching toward a field for training. You don't follow. Your stick, still clutched from that bandit-scary road, won't help against French knights. The village feels emptier already, women watching from doorways, their faces tight. You're tempted to approach one for shelter, but the war talk's got everyone edgy. Your phone's hidden, but you're paranoid one flash could get you labeled a spy. You need a plan. Maybe hide until the muster's over, or barter for a spot in a hut. The manor's glow looms, its lord safe while the village bleeds. A woman passes, carrying a basket of bandages, probably for the wounded who'll return, if they return. You feel a pang for that conscripted boy, his spear wobbling. Joke number 3. You thought your deadline was pressure? Try marching to war with a pitchfork and a prayer. The green's quiet now, save for a dog's bark, and you're alone. Winter's cold biting harder. War's shadow is long, and you're a speck in its path. You need food, warmth, and a way to stay invisible. Time to move before the village's fear, or a knight's eye, catches you. You're slipping away from the green, the conscript's marching footsteps fading as you duck into the village's frosty lanes. The winter air's brutal, slicing through your hoodie, and that sewage stink, your grim buddy, now carries a hint of charred wood from dying fires. Your cough's a constant rattle, and the war muster's tension, those scared boys with spears, has you on edge. You're craving something to lift the gloom. And lucky for you, the village is buzzing with a new vibe. Music, laughter, and the clink of mugs. A festival's kicking off, and you're about to dive into a rare burst of medieval merriment. Time to see how these folks party when the world's not trying to crush them. You follow the noise to a clearing near the church, where bonfires crackle and tables are piled with bread, apples, and jugs of ale. Villagers are dancing to a piper's jaunty tune, their faces lit with something close to joy. A mainstream fact to ground you. Festivals in 14th century England, often tied to saints' days or harvests, were vital breaks from the grind. They brought food, music, and a chance to forget taxes or war, even if just for a night. You're crashing a party, and it's the warmest thing you've felt since landing here. A woman in a patched apron thrusts a mug of ale at you, grinning. "Drink, stranger," she says, and you take a sip. Watery, sour, but it's free. A quirky tidbit? Some festivals featured ale tasters, village officials who'd check brews for quality, often getting tipsy on the job. You spot a man wobbling, mug in hand, and wonder if he's tasting or just celebrating. You're starting to relax, the fire's heat thawing your fingers. You remember the revolt's rage, those pitchforks seem distant now, and marvel at how fast misery flips to merriment. Joke number 1. You thought your office party was lit? Try dancing with a pig farmer who smells like his job. You join the crowd, swaying to the music. A girl's twirling ribbons and kids are chasing each other, stealing apples. It's chaotic but alive, a stark contrast to the war muster's dread. You're still an outsider, but the ale's loosening everyone up, and your sneakers aren't drawing stares. Historians still argue whether festivals were true relief or just a lord's trick to keep peasants docile. Some say they built community, others say they were bred in circus distractions. You're leaning toward relief, especially when a man slaps your back, offering a chunk of cheese. You scarf it, your stomach praising the miracle. The piper switches to a rowdy tune, and the dancing gets wilder. Men hoisting women, laughter drowning out the cold. You're tempted to join, but trip over a stray mug, earning chuckles. Your cough's quieter, maybe from the ale or the warmth, but you're paranoid it'll flare up. You remember the midwife's herbs, this morning's glare feels so far, and wonder if she's here, brewing something stronger than ale. The manor's shadow looms nearby, but no knights are crashing this party. Yet. Joke number 2. Forget open bar. Here, free ale means you might wake up in a barn with no shoes. A mock joust starts. Kids with sticks fighting like knights. And the crowd roars. You're swept up, cheering despite yourself. For a moment, you're not the time traveler, just another face in the firelight. But a drunk man's eyeing your hoodie, muttering about fancy threads. You slip to the crowd's edge, your phone still hidden. That watch scares a distant warning. You need to stay low. Festivals are fun, but loose tongues could spell trouble. The church bell tolls, late and soft, and some villagers cross themselves, superstition never far. Those bone charms still creep you out. The fires are dying, and the crowd's thinning, some stumbling home, others curling up by the embers. You're alone again, the ale's buzz fading, winter's bite creeping back. Joke number 3. You thought your karaoke night was epic? Try singing with folks who think encore means wrestling a goat. You need a plan. Maybe barter for a blanket or find a festival straggler to bunk with. The village feels softer tonight, but war and want are waiting. Time to move before the cold or a nosy drunk catches you. You're slipping away from the festival's dying embers, the piper's tune still echoing as the winter night clamps down hard. The air's bitter, that sewage stink, your old nemesis, cutting through the fading scent of ale and bonfire smoke. Your stomach's grateful for the cheese and ale, but your cough's back, a sharp rasp that makes you wince. The festival's joy was a brief escape, but the village's grim reality, war, cold, suspicion, is creeping back. You're drawn to a faint chant near the church, where candlelight spills from a low building. It's a monastery school, and you're about to peek into the narrow world of medieval education, where learning's a privilege you definitely don't have. Time to see who gets to read and who's left in the dark. You creep closer, hugging the shadows to avoid prying eyes. The building's stone, sturdy like the church, with a wooden door cracked open. Inside, a monk in a rough robe is drilling Latin to a handful of boys, their faces pinched with focus or boredom. A mainstream fact to ground you. Education in 14th century England was rare, mostly run by the church. Monastery schools taught boys, usually nobles or clergy-bound, for priesthood or administration, using Latin for scripture and law. You're looking at an elite club, and your sneakers and hoodie are a one-way ticket to the reject pile. You lean in, catching phrases like Dominus and Peccatum. The boys scratch on wax tablets, their quills scraping. A quirky tidbit? Some students believed sleeping with a book under their pillow would absorb knowledge. You spot a boy yawning, his head dangerously close to his tablet, and wonder if he's banking on osmosis. You're tempted to chuckle, but the monk's glare could curdle milk. You remember the festival's loose laughter, feels like hours ago, and realize this room's a different world, rigid, quiet, and not for you. Joke number 1. You thought your finals were tough? Try memorizing Latin verbs while a monk eyes you like you stole his Bible. The monk corrects a boy's pronunciation, his voice sharp but patient. You're starting to get why education's a big deal. It's a ladder out of the fields, those blisters still sting, or a shot at the church's power, that sermon's weight lingers. But it's boys only, and even then, just the right ones, sons of lords or rich merchants. You think of the midwife's daughter, mending tunics with no shot at this. Historians still argue whether these schools spread knowledge or just reinforced class divides. Some say they trained future leaders. Others say they locked learning behind wealth and gender. You're betting on locked, especially when you see the monk shoo a curious village kid from the doorway. Your cough betrays you, loud in the quiet. The monk's head snaps up, and you duck, heart racing. You're paranoid your phone, still hidden since the watch scare, would get you burned as a sorcerer in this bookish crowd. You back away, the frost crunching underfoot. You're nobody here, and knowledge is power you can't touch. You remember the manners scheming lords, that map talk feels so distant, and wonder if they started in rooms like this, learning to rule while peasants toiled. Joke number 2. Forget student loans. Here, tuition means being born with the right last name. The chanting resumes, and you're alone again, the school's glow fading as you retreat. The village is hushed, most folks asleep or huddled by fires. You're freezing, your scraped knee aching, and the war muster's shadow, those conscripted boys, looms in your mind. You need a plan. Maybe charm a villager for shelter, or avoid the church's watchful eyes. The monastery's discipline makes you miss the festival's chaos, but both feel out of reach. Joke number 3. You thought your group study was brutal? Try cramming scripture while your teacher's got a direct line to God. Winter's grip is tightening, and you're running low on warmth and luck. Time to find a corner to hide before the morning bells or a monk's suspicion catches you. You're slinking away from the monastery school, the monk's Latin chants fading into the winter night as you navigate the village's icy lanes. The air's a knife, slicing through your hoodie, and that sewage stink, your grim stalker, mixes with the faint smoke of dying hearth fires. Your cough's a persistent jab, and the school's rigid order, those boys and their wax tablets, has you feeling even more like an outsider. You're starting to notice the village's clunky tools, wooden plows, hand mills, and it hits you how far you are from your tech-filled world. You're about to dive into the medieval technology gap where cutting edge means a slightly sharper scythe. Time to miss your gadgets and learn how these folks get by. You pass a blacksmith's forge, its glow spilling onto the frost. The smith's hammering a plow blade, sparks flying like tiny comets. A mainstream fact to ground you. Medieval technology in 14th century England was basic, but evolving. Water mills ground grain, and iron tools were common, but most work relied on muscle and grit. You're in a world where automation is an ox pulling a cart, and your phone's as useful as a rock. You watch the smith, his arms like tree trunks, and feel a pang for your laptop's hum. Remember that watch sparking witch panic? You step closer, drawn by the heat. The smith glances up, his face sooty. "What's your gawking worth?" he grumbles. You offer to haul charcoal, hoping for warmth or food. He points to a pile, and you start lugging, your blistered hands, from that field work, protesting. A quirky tidbit? Some blacksmiths believed hammering at dawn woke the iron's spirit, making it stronger. You catch the smith muttering to his forge, and you're not sure if it's prayer or superstition. Those bone charms still linger. You're too tired to ask. Joke number 1. You thought your Wi-Fi outage was rough? Try forging a nail with a hammer and a bad attitude. The work's brutal, but you're learning. Tools here are crude, wooden looms, hand-cranked grindstones, and carts that creak like they're begging for retirement. You're missing your car, your microwave, even your toothbrush. The smith hands you a bent nail as pay, and you pocket it, half laughing at your new net worth. You're starting to see why progress is slow. Every task takes forever, and innovation's a luxury when survival's the goal. Historians still argue whether medieval tech was stagnant or quietly advancing. Some say mills sparked growth, Others say tradition choked invention. You're betting on choked, especially when you trip over a wobbly cartwheel outside. Your cough's worse, the cold and charcoal dust clawing your lungs. You remember the midwife's herbs, her glare feels like yesterday, and wish you'd bartered for a remedy. The forge's heat is fading as the smith banks the fire, and you're back in the cold, the nail in your pocket a sad trophy. You're nobody, and your tech knowledge, coding, apps, is useless when a plow's the height of engineering. You recall the manor's lords, that map talk seems ages ago, and wonder if they dream of better tools or just more taxes. Joke number 2. Forget tech support. Here, support means praying your axe doesn't break mid-chop. You wander toward the village green, passing a woman spinning wool with a drop spindle, her fingers nimble despite the frost. It's hypnotic but slow, and you're aching for a sewing machine. The village feels stuck, its tools a testament to endurance over efficiency. You're paranoid your phone could get you labeled a sorcerer, so it stays hidden. You need a plan, maybe barter your nail for food, or learn a skill that doesn't involve freezing. The church bell tolls, low and mournful, a reminder of time's relentless march. Joke number 3. You thought your software update was slow? Try waiting a century for a better wheel. Winter's tightening, and you're running low on warmth and hope. Time to find shelter before the night or a suspicious smith catches you. You're trudging away from the blacksmith's forge, the bent nail in your pocket a meager prize as the winter night bites harder. The air's a frozen blade, that sewage stink, your eternal tag-along, now laced with the acrid tang of charcoal and frost. Your cough's a jagged rasp, and the village's clunky tools, that plow blade's sparks still flicker in your mind, have you aching for your tech-filled world. You're weaving through the village when you overhear hushed talk of the king's decree near a hut. The royal whims are stirring, and you're about to feel the ripple of a distant monarch's power in this muddy corner of England. Time to learn how a king's word can shake a village, and why you should keep your head down. You pause near the hut where 2 men are muttering over a shared mug of ale. Their voices are low, wary, like they're spilling secrets. One mentions a new tax to fund the French war, and the other curses under his breath. A mainstream fact to ground you. In 14th century England, the king's decrees, often tied to war or revenue, reached villages through lords. Edward III, ruling in the 1350s, was deep in the 100 Years' War, squeezing peasants for taxes or troops. You're in a world where a king's whim means hunger for folks like these. And you, a stranger with no coin or clout, you lean closer, catching talk of a royal messenger spotted nearby. A quirky tidbit? Messengers sometimes carried wax-sealed scrolls with such pomp that villagers thought they held magic. You imagine a rider flashing a scroll like it's a VIP pass, but these men aren't impressed. They're griping about another levy. You remember the war muster's grim faces, those boys with spears, and realize the king's reach is why they're marching. Your cough interrupts, and one man glares, muttering about spies. You back off, hands up. Joke number 1. You thought your tax season was brutal? Try owing a king who's never seen your village but wants your last potato. You slip toward the village green, the men's words sinking in. The king's decrees are like ghosts, unseen but heavy, filtering through the manor's lords. That map talk feels so close. You're starting to see the chain. King to lord to peasant, with you dangling off the end. A woman's hauling water nearby, grumbling about royal greed, stealing her grain. You're tempted to ask more, but your sneakers and hoodie scream, outsider, and post-revolt paranoia, those pitchforks linger, makes you a target. Historians still argue whether royal power unified England or just bled it. Some say taxes built armies, others say they sparked revolts. You're betting on revolts, especially when you see the woman's clenched jaw, your scraped knees throbbing, and the cold's making your cough sound like a death rattle. You remember the midwife's herbs? Her brisk stride seems yesterday, and wish you'd begged for help. The village feels like a pressure cooker, the king's demands piling on war, winter, and want. You're nobody, and a royal decree could mean conscription or worse if you're caught loitering. You pass a kid carving a stick, his face tight. Maybe he's heard the tax talk too. You feel a pang. He's got no say, just like you. Joke number 2. Forget voting with your wallet. Here, voice means praying the king doesn't notice your cow. The green's quiet, most folks huddled indoors against the frost. You spot the church's steeple, its bell silent but looming, a reminder of the church's royal-backed power. That Latin sermon's weight clings. You're paranoid your phone could get you labeled a traitor if it's found, so it stays hidden. You need a plan. Maybe barter your nail for food or find a hut to crash in before the king's men sweep through. The manor's glow taunts you. Its lords cozy while you freeze. Joke number 3. You thought your boss's emails were vague? Try decoding a king's law when pay up means starve. Winter's claw is tightening, and you're running low on warmth and luck. Time to move before a royal messenger, or a villager's suspicion, catches you. You're still weaving through the village's frozen lanes, the men's grumbling about the king's decree ringing in your ears as the winter night clamps down. The air's a cruel mix of frost and that sewage stink. Your nose has surrendered, now tinged with the faint rot of damp straw. Your cough's a hacking beast, and the royal tax talk, those men and their ale-soaked dread, has you jumpier than ever. You're starting to feel the village's fragility, its people stretched thin by war, cold, and now a king's greed. But something darker looms. Death's presence is everywhere, and you're about to confront it head-on in a world where plague and violence are as common as mud. Time to face mortality's grip and figure out how to keep breathing. You stumble toward the churchyard, drawn by a low wail cutting through the quiet. A small crowd's gathered, their faces shadowed by torchlight. A makeshift grave's being dug, the earth hard and unyielding. A woman's sobbing, clutching a tiny bundle, a child wrapped in linen. A mainstream fact to ground you. Death was a constant in 14th century England, with the Black Death shadow lingering into the 1350s. High infant mortality, disease, and violence meant life expectancy hovered around 30, though many died younger. You're in a world where every day's a roll of the dice, and you're not feeling lucky. The priest's there, muttering prayers, his voice flat. The crowd's somber, but there's a grim routine to it. Like this isn't their first grave this week. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers believe tying a coin to a corpse's hand paid for its soul's passage to heaven. You spot a glint in the child's shroud and wonder if it's superstition or desperation. Those bone charms still haunt you. You're tempted to edge away, but your cough betrays you, loud and raw. A man glares, muttering about plague carriers. You shrink back, heart pounding. You remember the sick man's moan, that healer's hut feels so distant, and realize you're one bad day from being the one in the ground. Joke number 1. You thought your flu shot was urgent? Try dodging death when medicine means praying over a dead pigeon. You retreat to the churchyard's edge, the wail fading, but not the weight. You're starting to see death's fingerprints everywhere. The revolt's body in the field. Was it Scarface? The war muster's doomed boys, even the pottage lady's tired eyes. The village is a treadmill of loss, and you're barely hanging on. Historians still argue whether medieval people grew numb to death or lived in constant fear. Some say frequent funerals dulled the pain. Others say every loss fueled dread. You're betting on dread, especially when you notice the crowd's quick glances, like they're counting who's next. Your scraped knee's a dull ache, but your cough's stealing your breath. Each hack a reminder of that midwife's herbs you never got. The frost's biting, and your hoodie's a joke against it. You're paranoid your phone, still hidden since the watch scare, could get you blamed for cursing the village if it's found. You need a plan. Maybe find a healer or barter for shelter before you're too weak to move. The manor's glow mocks you, its lords untouched by this graveyard scene. You recall their scheming, that map talk lingers, and wonder if they're counting bodies or just coins. Joke number 2. Forget life insurance. Here, planning ahead means hoping your grave's dug before you're gone. A bell tolls, slow and heavy, signaling another soul's departure. The crowd disperses, some crossing themselves, others hurrying to fires you don't have. You're alone, the churchyard's silence louder than the wail. Death's not just a risk here, it's a neighbor, and you're feeling its stare. You think of the festival's fleeting joy, That ale-soaked dance seems a dream. And cling to its memory, but it's not enough. Joke number 3. You thought your Monday blues were rough? Try waking up knowing today might be your funeral. Winter's claw is relentless, and you're running low on strength and time. You need food, warmth, and a miracle to stay out of the next grave. Time to move before death, or a villager's fear claims you. You're slipping away from the churchyard, the fresh grave, and that woman's wail carving a hollow in your chest as you stumble through the village's frozen lanes. The winter nights of ice, your breath clouding in the air, and that sewage stink, your grim shadow, mixes with the faint whiff of tallow from dying candles. Your cough's a brutal hack, each one stealing air, and the specter of death, that tiny shroud still haunts you, has you desperate to cling to something solid. You're starting to question the village's ironclad faith, sensing cracks of doubt beneath its prayers and charms. Time to explore the tension between belief and skepticism in a world where questioning God could cost you everything. You head toward the village's edge, where the church's steeple looms but feels less like a beacon now. A group of men huddle near a hut, their voices low, debating something heatedly. You pause, catching words like fate and priest's lies. A mainstream fact to ground you. In 14th century England, the Catholic Church's grip was near absolute, shaping law, morality, and even time with its bells. But whispers of doubt about corrupt priests or divine justice simmered, especially after the Black Death shook faith in God's plan. You're eavesdropping on a rare crack in the village's armor. One man, his face scarred from work or war, scoffs about the priest's tithes buying gold for Rome. Another defends the church, crossing himself nervously. A quirky tidbit? Some skeptics believed stashing a pebble under your tongue during Mass could shield you from divine wrath if you doubted aloud. You notice a man fidgeting, his mouth tight, and wonder if he's got a stone or just regrets. You're tempted to join in, but your cough erupts, drawing glares. You back off, remembering the plague carrier jab at the grave feels like minutes ago. You're an outsider, and questioning faith here is like poking a bear with a stick. Joke number 1. You thought your Reddit debates were spicy? Try doubting God when the priest got a direct line to the stake. You wander toward the fields, the men's voices fading. The frost crunches under your sneakers, and your scraped knee throbs, a reminder of your manor climb. Seems a lifetime ago. You're starting to see faith as both glue and chain. Villagers lean on it to survive death's shadow, but it traps them under the church's thumb. You recall the monastery school's rigid chants, those boys and their quills, and wonder if any dared question the scriptures. Historians still argue whether medieval doubt was widespread or just quiet grumbling. Some say heresies like Lollardy sparked real rebellion. Others say most clung to faith out of fear. You're betting on fear, especially when you spot a charm dangling from a fence, its bones rattling in the wind. Those superstitions never quit. Your cough's relentless and you're shivering, the cold mocking your hoodie. You're paranoid your phone, still hidden since the watch panic, could get you labeled a heretic if it's found. Doubting's bad enough without sorcery. You need a plan. Maybe find a skeptic to bunk with or steer clear of the church's watchful eyes. You pass a woman muttering prayers over a sick goat, her faith unshaken despite its labored breathing. You feel a pang. She's got hope you're losing. You remember the festival's fleeting joy? That ale-fueled dance feels like a dream, and wish you could borrow her certainty. Joke number 2? Forget crisis of faith. Here, crisis means wondering if God's real, while your neighbor's sharpening a pitchfork. The village is still, save for a distant dog's bark. The manor's glow taunts you, its lords likely untouched by these doubts, their faith a tool for power. That map talk lingers. You're alone, the winter's bite sharpening your own questions. Why are you here, and can you outrun this world's rules? The stars are cold, offering no answers. Joke number 3. You thought your existential dread was deep. Try questioning eternity when hell is preached every Sunday. You need food, warmth, and a way to stay invisible. Death's close, doubt's risky, and winter's unforgiving. Time to move before a priest's suspicion, or your own crumbling hope, catches you. You're stumbling through the village's icy lanes, the men's whispered doubts about faith still swirling in your head as the winter night presses in like a vice. The air's a frozen blade, that sewage stink, your faithful ghost, now laced with the faint char of extinguished fires. Your cough's a brutal claw, each hack stealing breath, and the weight of death and doubt, that child's grave, those skeptical mutters, has you questioning if you'll ever find a place in this merciless world. You're at the end of your journey, and it's time to reflect on what you've seen. Mud, power, faith, and survival, and whether you could ever belong here. This is your final step before the world fades. Let's take it slow. You find a quiet corner near the village green, slumping against a low wall. The frost bites your hands, and your scraped knee, from that reckless manor climb, throbs in the cold. You're alone, the village asleep under a sky sharp with stars. A mainstream fact to ground you: medieval England, especially in the 1350s, was a crucible of hardship. Plague, war, and feudal chains shaped a society where survival demanded grit and luck. You've lived it, from fields to festivals, and you're still standing, but barely. You're starting to wonder if home is just a memory now. You pull your hoodie tighter, thinking back to your arrival. That first squelch in the mud, the villagers' stares at your sneakers. Feels like years, not days. A quirky tidbit? Some medieval travelers believed a sprig of hazel tucked in your belt could guide you home. You've got no hazel, no map, just a bent nail, that blacksmith's pay, and a phone that's useless without a signal. You laugh weakly, the sound swallowed by the night. You remember the pottage lady's grudging bread, a small victory, the revolt's chaos, Scarface's fall, and the festival's fleeting joy, that ale-soaked dance. Each moment's a thread in this brutal tapestry, and you're woven in, whether you like it or not. Joke number 1, you thought your road trip was rough? Try time traveling to a place where GPS is a prayer and a wild guess. Your cough cuts through, sharp and wet, and you wince, the memory of that healer's hut, that sick man's moan, flashing back. You're starting to see the village as a living thing. Lords scheming, peasants toiling, women enduring, all under the church's watchful eye, that Latin sermon's weight lingers. Historians still argue whether medieval life was a grim slog or a vibrant struggle. Some say community and faith gave it meaning. Others say it was just surviving one crisis to the next. You're torn, leaning toward slog, but the festival's laughter and the midwife's quiet strength tug at you. Could you belong here, with time? You doubt it. You're too soft, too modern, too alone. The stars shift, and you think of the king's decrees, those men cursing taxes, the knights' swords, that training field's clang, and the women's resilience, that girl mending tunics. You've seen power, fear, and hope collide, and you're still a stranger. Your phone a secret that could burn you. That watch scare set the tone. You need a plan, but the thought dissolves. You're too tired, too cold. The manor's glow mocks you, its lords untouched by your struggle. Joke number 2, forget finding yourself. Here, found means a lord's dungeon or a priest's pyre. You're not sure you've learned enough to survive, but you've felt this world's pulse, raw and unyielding. A dog barks, distant, and you flinch, your body screaming for rest. You're starting to let go, the village blurring at the edges. You imagine a hazel sprig, a way back, but it's just you and the frost. Joke number 3, you thought your bucket list was bold? Try checking Survive Medieval England off yours, if you make it. The night's too big, and you're too small, but you've seen something real here, something that'll linger. Time to rest if you can find it. Now, let's ease you out of this frozen village, your breath still clouding in the winter air. Picture the stars softening, their sharp edges blurring as the night grows gentler, wrapping you like a worn blanket. The village's harsh pulse, its mud, its bells, its fleeting joys, fades into a quiet hum, like a lullaby sung by someone who's known too much loss. You're safe, slipping from the weight of lords and graves, your cough just a memory now. Feel the frost melt, the manor's shadow dissolve, and let your tired body sink into warmth, as if that festival fire's embers are cradling you. You've walked a hard road, seen a world that fought to survive, and you're stronger for it. Close your eyes, let the sewage stink drift away, and imagine a soft breeze carrying you somewhere kind. Sleep's waiting, deep and calm, whispering that you've earned this rest. Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams.